Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. This is a special edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Today you'll be listening to me, John, interviewing a good friend of mine, Josh Farnsworth, who's been a Jags fan for his entire life pretty much. And Josh has been keeping a close eye on the Jaguars over the past few years, and he just recently moved to West Palm Beach down in Florida after taking a few classes up in Brockport with me. So I figured this would be a good opportunity to get a little bit of a different, angle on the AFC Championship game. Everyone's going to be talking about the New England Patriots and their side of the story, but what about the Jacksonville Jaguars? Nobody really gave them too much of a chance, and yet here they are, just one win away from the Super Bowl. So without further ado, here is my interview with Josh Farnsworth. I guess let's start things, Josh. Let me just ask you, what were your expectations for the team this year? And I guess what did you think the team's or the fans' expectations of the team were going into this year? Because they just won only 3 games last year, and they had never won more than 5 games under their current owner in a single season. Then all of a sudden, they finished with this fantastic season. But I guess, what did you think was going to happen this year?
Well, as a Jags fan, traditionally there's always been an expectation of, them playing good football. But over the last 10 years, it's kind of gone downhill. Last year, of course, was just a terrible year. We had the 4th worst record in the league, and they wound up signing Tom Coughlin, and right away they started changing the whole atmosphere of the team. They brought in Calais Campbell, AJ Boye, and they had some good draft picks as well. And you could kind of see throughout the preseason that things were looking a lot different than they did in the past. They weren't making, terrible penalties in the preseason, and they were being very disciplined. And coming out of the Patriots meeting, both teams in the preseason looked very even. And a lot of people in New England at that time had said that the Jaguars looked for real. And as the preseason went along, there was a lot of drama with Bortles and Henne, who was going to start at quarterback. And you didn't have a real good feel about the quarterback at that point, but you look back at the tradition that the Jaguars had as far as scrambling quarterbacks, and I wasn't set on Henne. So when they announced Bortles and they had a direction, it felt like things were going to go in the right direction. And then, of course, they came out in the first game and they completely demolished the Titans. After that, it's like, yeah, we're going to do better than 500 this year. And they looked like a team. They didn't look like a scrimmage team of some sort. But I felt that when they hit that first game, that it was going to be over 500. I didn't think they were going to be as well as they were at this point, but. I saw a team that looked the part.
I understand. A lot of the turnaround has to do with the Jacksonville Jaguars defense, and a lot's been made of how great they've been this year. But is there been one key element of the defense? What is it about these guys that makes them so special about the way they just play together? Because it's not just the defensive backs who are arguably the best in football. They've got that fearsome front four. They've got guys who can rush the passer. They have probably, if not one of the most athletic outside linebackers in Telvin Smith, a proven middle linebacker, and Paul Posluszny. They had some of these pieces there in years past, but it took to a whole new level this year. Could you talk a little bit about maybe why that happened, or just what clicked for them this year?
Yeah, you could see this year compared to years past, there's a higher maturity as to what the team does on the field. They look like they're prepared. I think it all starts with Tom Coughlin at the top. He has a certain expectation. Of course, Marone last year, when he took over, he went into the Jaguars locker room and he took down the TVs. He took the ping pong tables out. He took out the dominoes table. It was business, and that's what it's become for that team. It's a business atmosphere now, and you can see it. The players want to play now. They know that they're being competitive, and they want to play. You can see it. I think that's the biggest difference right there. Is there's just an urgency about the team now.
I understand. On the other side, a lot is always going to be made about the quarterback position, and Blake Bortles has had an up and down career, to say the least. Last year, maybe hitting, I don't know if you'd call it a low point, but he certainly struggled in his third year. And even though he's still been inconsistent at times, I think games like the one he had last week has shown just how far he's come and just what exactly he's capable of. I guess, do you have, what was the answer for him this year? Do you think, did he just figure it out this year? What was it about Blake Bortles that he figured it out maybe? And even though he's not the super consistent guy that you probably want him to be yet, he's been able to make plays, and especially in the postseason, he's been able to make plays at key times, and it's led them on the brink of the Super Bowl appearance here. So I guess just can you talk a little bit about that?
I think you can see from him that he's finally starting to become comfortable in the offense, and this is a totally new offense for him. When the new regime took over in the from Marone, they put in a new offense. They kind of worked with it through the off season, but every quarterback has time where he needs to become comfortable in the system. Players need to mesh, and he really hasn't had that chance all year. There's been injuries. Hearns, he's been hindered on the sidelines. Marquise Lee, he's on and off the field. He drops passes. You just take a look at the biggest weapon that he lost this year was A-Rob, Allen Robinson, and that was his go-to. And at the beginning of the year, you could tell that he wasn't comfortable with the receivers he had at that time. But as the season has gone along, you've seen him, kind of take over that role. Become a lot more comfortable with the new receivers. There's two rookies on the team that have been starters for the last 6 weeks. Keenan Cole and D.D. Westbrook, which have been outstanding, but it takes time for them to become comfortable with the receivers. And they're not burners. They're not the type of guys that, break off routes real fast because they're rookies, So for the most part, I think this year he's kind of gotten better as the season's gone along because that confidence is starting to roll back in. And, he's making audibles at the line, checking out of plays now, where before at the beginning of the season, they told him, this is the play, go run it. Now he's making decisions on the field. He's checking out. You watch him walk up to the line, especially against the Steelers. Run the same play a couple times. They see the run coming. He audibles out of it. It's a play-action pass to the fullback for a touchdown. He's just making the right decisions now. He's becoming football smart. And I think that's the biggest difference for him.
Can you talk a little bit about his progression, just even from the last 2 weeks, how he really struggled in Buffalo for throwing the ball, but he was also to make plays with his legs and was able to find a way to get the Jaguars to score. And then on this past Sunday, he wasn't exactly, he didn't throw for 300 yards, but he made some really fantastic throws and something that I personally was not expecting to see. And I think a lot of Steelers fans and media kind of, weren't expecting him to make, and we underestimated him, if you will. So I guess seeing that kind of progression, what kind of confidence does that give you going into a game in New England?
Well, I think the difference between the Buffalo Bills game and the Steelers game is that the Bills defense is really starting to come along. Those cornerbacks, they're young, and they're another team that really were making great strides throughout the season, but injuries or so, the defense is on the field for too long at times. I think for the most part, that defense in Buffalo is starting to really mold up into a top 10 defense. And they took away the receivers. And, when you take away the receivers, you're holding, the blitz back. And so Bortles has to make decisions. What's he going to do? He's going to run. And he found ways to take it down the field and help the team win. And I think for the most part that the way that he ran in that Buffalo game made the Steelers realize that they needed to stack the box a little bit more, pay more attention to Bortles and the running back, which wound up hurting them in the passing game. You can watch eight guys in the box on the first couple plays. Tight end sneaks out to the right. He makes the pass to a wide open tight end. It's nothing special. It's nothing flashy. It's just an example of a defense overcompensating for something that's the Jaguars' strength.
So, New England, their defense hasn't exactly been their strength this year. And based on their defensive front, which hasn't really been good, and the way the Jaguars just manhandled the Steelers' defensive front, how do you think that's going to play out on Sunday? Do you think the Jaguars are going to try to, smash it down their throat just like they did against the Steelers? One would think they'd have as much, if not more, success given the track record of some of those guys in Pittsburgh as opposed to the guys in New England. Their strength on defense is definitely in the secondary, so maybe they try to stack the box. Would you try, if you were the offensive coordinator of the Jaguars, so I'm not sure who it is, I'm sure you do. Yeah.
I think that you stick to what you've been good at all year. You're ranked first in rushing yards. You do what you can to weaken the defense, and you want to have that time of possession. You don't want Tom Brady taking the field because he can go down the field in a flash. You take a look back at the 49ers and Jaguars game. Both offenses are pretty close. They used the running backs out of the backfield, and in that game, the running backs accounted for 3 of the most yards of that game. So you look at that, and then you go to the Pats offense, and then you go to the Jags defense, and you say, well, they're pretty well even, but on the offensive side for the Jaguars, you're looking at the 5th-ranked team in points, the 6th-ranked team in yards, the 17th-ranked team in passing yards, and the first team in ranking in rushing yards against the defense of the Patriots, who are 5th in points, so that's an even lock right there. In yards, they're the 29th, and then in passing yards, they're the 30th, and then in the rushing yards, they're the 20th. So they're near the bottom of the bottle as far as their defense goes. So I think for the most part, you try to jab it down their throat, keep the defense on the field, and you keep Brady off the field. And you slowly, methodically, earn the points, and you make him have to pass it down the field to the point that he has to wait for those receivers to get open, and you hope that the defensive lineman can get to him. And I think that's the only way that they're going to be able to win this game, because if Tom Brady's comfortable and they have the lead, he'll just toss it out to the running back. He'll toss it to the tight end. He'll toss it back to the running back, run an intermediate route here, intermediate route there, and the Jags will slowly fall behind. And that's been the way that the Jaguars have lost in the past, is that defense stays out on the field too long. It's a bad time.
So in order for the Jaguars offense to stay on the field, they're obviously going to have to convert on some 3rd downs on Sunday. Who's been the most, I guess, reliable receiver? Has it been a tight end? Has it been a running back? Like, if it's a 3rd and 3, is it actually Blake Bortles' legs, or is it Fournette's legs? What's your best option on 3rd down and short?
Well, his favorite target so far this year has been Marquise Lee, right down the middle. Usually it'll come off of a play-action pass on 3rd down where he'll try to, bring the linebackers up so he can create that open space behind the linebackers, and he'll just drop it in there to Lee. The other option that he has that he's used a lot this year has been Mercedes Lewis, and that big, huge tight end. He's a guy that's a big target, and he's been called on third down quite a bit this year. But if it's short and third, they're going to run the ball. And there's not a doubt in my mind. If it's under 4 yards, they'll just hand it to Fournette and let him do work. But if it's longer than that, it's going to be a play action to Lee or to Mercedes Lewis with the option. Of course, this past week it happened a couple times where Bortles took a drive down the field to Keenan Cole. He feels comfortable throwing down the field to him. You've seen it against the Seattle Seahawks a couple times this year on third down. So I think for the most part, though, I think that Marquise Lee has been his favorite target on third down. With under 4 yards, it's going to Fournette.
Fair enough. On the other side of the ball, this is obviously the matchup that everyone's talking about. Tom Brady and the New England Patriots offense, Rob Gronkowski against, Jalen Ramsey, A.J. Bouye, Calais Campbell, and the Jacksonville Jaguars defense. This is quite simply a clash of the Titans, if you will, on both sides. So,
yeah,
I was texting you earlier in the week, and, maybe the game plan is pretty simple, but Tom Coughlin has been maybe the Belichick and Brady kryptonite over the years, and there's a reason for that. Is that what the Jaguars are going to try to do?
Yeah, I think for the most part they're going to try to throw guys in Brady's face, get him off his game, get him out of his rhythm. I think that's going to be the number one thing that they're going to try to do. The other thing, I think they're going to try to blanket the field. They're going to go man up with their zone on the linebackers. The one thing to watch with the Pats this week is how they swing the running backs out. Over the last 5 games, Talvin Smith has not been the best against the running backs. If you take a look back last week, Bell got outside and got a couple receptions for some yards against Talvin Smith. So you just they have to be on their game with the running backs more than they need to be on their game with Gronkowski, because that's their bread and butter. And it has been that way since Brady's been there. They had Falk in the backfield back in the early years, and you take a look at that team, and it's been the running backs. Gronk is a huge target, and he's been a huge part of that offense, but when Gronk's not in there, it's still the running backs getting the job done out of the backfield.
Which running back do you think is most dangerous between Lewis, White, and Burkhead, assuming he plays? He might not play. It could be Gillislee, but which one of those guys is scariest, I guess?
I think Deion Lewis is going to be the big threat. You watch how he moves when he's on the field, catching the ball out of the back. He'll get, the linebacker run in one direction, catch the ball, and come back across and completely, just destroy defenses with these short catches that turn into 10 yards, and that's been the biggest problem for teams playing the Patriots this year is, controlling, the running backs. You look at the Steelers when they played them, Deion Lewis carved up, the defense. You see him come out of the backfield and catch the ball and do magical things, and he's just so slippery, and defenses have a hard time with him. I think that's going to be the biggest issue right there.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, the running backs are a huge part of the Patriots' offense, and you mentioned even though he might not be as big of a part, Rob Gronkowski is a guy that's getting a ton of attention, and he's a matchup problem for everybody in the NFL, but the Jaguars might have someone in Jalen Ramsey, even though he's a cornerback and not a safety or linebacker that would typically match up with Gronkowski. You're looking at a guy that is big, fast, and physical, just like Gronkowski. Obviously he's not how big is Jalen Ramsey, by the way?
He's right around that 6'1" area. He's a bit thin. He's not a Richard Sherman type guy. So and he's not like a Aqib Talib type guy. He's a smaller quarterback, but he's got the quickness and he can jump like those guys to get up for the ball. That's the one thing that separates him, and his ability to close in is one of the big things too. I think they'll probably line him up over Gronk a couple times. I don't think it's going to be a regular thing because there are other wide receivers that are going to, like Amendola, that is one of Tom Brady's favorite targets. When Gronk isn't on the field, or even when he is on the field, you can catch him, looking back across the field and drop it onto him. And I don't think it'll happen a lot this week, but I think they'll try to put Campbell over top of Gronkowski, and when he comes off the line, they're going to jam him. They're going to jam him hard to knock him off his route, and then hope that the linebacker can stay underneath him or keep the free safety or strong safety above him. And I think they'll play zone against them pretty much, but I don't think they'll man up with Ramsey. I think it'll be a huge surprise if they do.
Do you think they'll have a specific linebacker assigned to his immediate area, like maybe Telvin Smith, or do you think they're going to have Smith more focused on the running backs?
I think what they're going to do is they're going to have Smith more focused on the running backs, and Miles Jack will wind up being the guy on Gronkowski. That's my take, because he has been excellent this year in the coverage. He picked off Ben last week, and he has been one of the better linebackers at covering this year. And especially with the coverage issues that Telvin has had over the last couple weeks, last 5 weeks, it's definitely something to watch.
New England is typically a tough place to play, especially in the playoffs. The Jaguars are facing a tall task, but it has been done before. Mark Sanchez has led the Jets to victories in Foxborough in the playoffs, and so has Joe Flacco. I guess, Josh, let me ask you, what is it going to take, and I'll just throw out some numbers, how many turnovers are the Jaguars going to need to force in order to win this game?
I think to keep it close, they're going to have to pick it off and create short fields, either through fumble recoveries or through tipped passes, interceptions. They're going to have to create short fields for the offense, and I think it's probably going to have to be a magic number of about two turnovers. That seems to be about the number for them to make it so that it's almost a guarantee they win. But because they turn around and they score off those turnovers so well. 7 total touchdowns off turnovers this year, the most out of the NFL. That's how they win most of their games, is off those turnovers. And
what about, I guess, on the offense? How many points are they going to have to score with that defense for you to say, that's enough? Are they going to have to score 3 touchdowns? Like, what is that magic points for number that you think they're going to have to reach?
I don't think the defense is actually going to have to score any touchdowns. Creating the short field, and the way that when they do get a turnover, it electrifies the whole team. I don't think they'll have to score off of the turnovers specifically by the defense scoring, but coming off the turnovers and scoring is huge. That's going to be the difference maker. If they can, get the interception, and that's 14 points right there. If they do that right off the bat, Brady's going to be looking down the field, and that's going to create more issues for him. But I think, if you had to choose, you feel more comfortable with the defense scoring 1 touchdown. But I don't think they need to. I think the turnovers themselves do enough.
Okay. All right. Can you give me one X factor on the Jaguars and Patriots, so both their offense and defense. So I'm talking one X factor for each side of the ball for both teams, so a total of 4. One guy that is going to be someone to watch, an X factor, someone that can make a difference in this game, someone that their performance could be the difference in winning and losing on both sides. I know it's a tough question because there's a lot of them, but if you want to start with just one, just go right ahead. Who do you think it's going to be?
Yeah, I'm going to go on the offensive side. I'm going to say actually more than Leonard Fournette or Blake Bortles, I think Yeldon has to have a big game coming out of the backfield, catching the ball in the flats. He's traditionally over the last couple of years been that guy, that comfort, receiver for Bortles. And since he's been back, Bortles has improved quite a little. He's, last week you can see his ability to just throw it out there and let him run. If that happens this week, it's going to extend downs. It's going to create first downs. The drives are going to be shorter. I think that's your X factor more than Fournette or Bortles himself. On the defense, I think it's got to be Telvin. If Telvin plays well and he's able to cover those running backs, and he's able to tackle in the clear and get those guys on the ground and create fourth downs, that's going to be the difference, because the rest of the team has played outstanding this year. AJ Boye had 90 plays going toward him this past year up until this last week against Antonio Brown, without a touchdown scored against him. So I think those guys have it covered as far as the corners, the safeties. The linebackers are going to be the big part this week. And if Yannick Ngakoue, if he can have a big game too, get into the quarterback and causing problems, which he's like that Jason Pierre-Paul from the Giants. He gets to the edge, he gets around him, does that spin move to get back inside. Those two guys, if they can come in and have big days, that's your X factor on defense.
Alrighty. If you had to name one player on the Patriots offense and defense that you think is going to have to be important to keep an eye on them, who do you think that's going to be?
On offense, of course, you have to go with the GOAT. He's the X factor on offense altogether. If he has a big day, it's going to make it tough for the Jags to win. But if he chokes and he causes a couple turnovers, throws interceptions like he did against the Dolphins, it's going to be a hard task for him to overcome. So he's going to have to play like the GOAT this week. That's the X factor on offense. On defense, I think it's the defense altogether. If they don't play well, it's game over as far as the rushing attack goes. If they can't stop the Jaguars' rushing attack, it's just not going to be well for them. Of course, they're 20th in the league in rushing, allowing rushing yards, so it's going to be a tall order for them.
Yeah, and with such a relatively unknown defensive front, they certainly are going to have their work cut out from them. Josh,
yeah.
Do you have something else to say?
Well, there is one guy. Of course, you're familiar with him.
I think so.
James Harrison.
Yeah.
That's the only real name that I know of on that defense, except for Stephen Gilmore. He's a lockdown style cornerback, of course, former Buffalo Bill. So he's a well-known guy as well.
Yeah, I feel like their secondary has more well-known players, but even looking at the Patriots game a few weeks ago, my co-host Austin and I were just really unsure of who most of these guys were. We were really just, wow, like where went the talent that these guys used to have? But in any case, the game is on Sunday, just a few days away. Can you give me a couple of bold predictions for how you think this game is going to go, and then give me a final score prediction and kind of how you think it's going to get there?
Okay, my bold prediction is that Brady throws 2 interceptions. And the Jaguars as a whole lines up with 5 sacks against Tom Brady. On offense, Bortles goes off. That's my bold prediction. He's taken a lot of beating this past year, and he's got a lot to prove. So I think he's going to show up, and he's going to show up in a big way. As far as the score goes, I'm going to keep it modest and say it's going to be 24-21 Jacksonville.
All right, the Jacksonville Jaguars on the road. They can upset the New England Patriots. They can make it to their first Super Bowl ever. And really, that would be quite a historic Super Bowl berth. I can't really, you think about stories where teams come out of nowhere. If the Jaguars can pull this off with that defense and all of a sudden they're at Super Bowl Sunday, I don't think you could find many people who would have been saying that at the beginning of the year. But, good on them. They've had a fantastic team, and maybe they do have a chance to knock out the New England Patriots. Josh has a lot of reasons to be confident after the way his team has played the last couple weeks. They showed they can play with anybody. And Josh, is there any final thoughts you have to add on the game, or I guess the season?
Yeah, just the month of December. I'm just going to name off some stats. Brady had 7 interceptions. Bortles had 5. Of course, we know Bortles was one of the most productive quarterbacks in the league in the month of December. Also, in the month of December, the Patriots played the Bills on December 3rd. Brady threw 0 touchdowns and 1 interception. Just a couple weeks later, Bortles played the Buffalo Bills. He created 1 touchdown and 0 interceptions against that defense. So that's just one thing to take a look at. Also, you take a look at some of the issues that the Jaguars might have is the running backs and tight end going off on them on this week. But for the most part, I think the Jags do hold an upper hand in this game, just off statistics. But it's going to be interesting. I know I'm excited. It's creeping up pretty quick. And just one more thing. There's 3 teams out of these 4 that will have their first Super Bowl win
if they make it there, yeah.
Yeah, a little stumble there.
That's all right. I got you. Mm-hmm. A lot of fantastic storylines. There's so much to talk about. And Josh, I wanted to thank you so much for coming on with me. It was a little short-sighted on my part not having you come on for the preview game or the preview of the Steelers-Jaguars game just last week. But, we talked during the course of that game and after the game, and I was really excited to hear what you might have to offer about this game. And, it's hard to root for a team that just knocked out the team you've been following and covering all year. But at the same point, I think everybody's kind of tired of New England. As great as they've been, I think people are ready for something different. So, Josh, good luck to your Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday. And thank you so much for coming on. Hopefully we can have you on again when the Steelers play the Jaguars next season, because as both teams were division winners, that means they'll be playing each other next season. So maybe we'll be able to connect one more time, eh?
Yeah, either that or else you can have me on in 2 weeks if the Jags get past the Patriots.
Hey, who knows? If
Here we go.
If Mark Sanchez can do it, I think anybody can do it, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Exactly. Alrighty. Thank you so much to my friend Josh Farnsworth for joining us today. Don't forget the AFC Championship game is the early game on Sunday starting at 3:30. Thank you, Steeler Nation, for listening to this special edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast, and thanks again to my friend Josh for joining me. Josh, take care. You have a good night, and we'll keep in touch, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.